Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, the U.S. Supreme Court turns down a request to hear a long-standing lawsuit over a massive copper mine planned for Arizona. Also tonight, more on the U.S. Justice Department closing its civil rights investigation of the Phoenix Police Department. And a new report finds new numbers regarding the rates of Alzheimer's disease. Those stories and more next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your public television station.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Arizona Treasurer Kimberly Yee today announced that she's running for State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Yee, a Republican, will challenge Republican incumbent Tom Horne, should Horne decide to run for re-election. Yee was first elected as treasurer in 2018 and won re-election in 2022 after abandoning a brief run for governor. She's term limited out for a third run as treasurer. Now, primary challenges against incumbents are unusual in politics, but far-right Republican lawmakers in the state's Freedom Caucus have been increasingly vocal in their frustration with the way Horne is going after purchases being made with education vouchers, or ESAs. Indeed, not long after Yee's announcement, Horne issued a statement reiterating his support of ESAs and his, quote, high priority in their survival, while at the same time listing items that have been rejected for funding, including a $5,000 Rolex watch, a $24,000 golf simulator, $60,000 worth of crystals, and funding for a vasectomy kit. Horne also noted that his department has won every appeal when parents have challenged those rejections. Other headlines: the UN expects millions of potential jobs will evaporate this year due to the effects of President Trump's trade war. Now, the agency predicts 53 million new jobs created next year. Sounds like a lot, but it's 7 million fewer jobs than previously expected. The International Labor Organization reports that nearly 84 million jobs across 71 countries are tied to consumer demand in the U.S., making them vulnerable to the impact of U.S. tariffs. And global temperatures are forecast to reach record or near record levels during the next 5 years. That's according to two world's top, meteorological agencies. Scientists warn that the higher temperatures could melt sea ice and glaciers to the point of no return. The report also noted worsening extremes around the world, from unprecedented heat waves to deadly inland flooding due to rapidly intensifying hurricanes. Earlier this week, the U.S. Supreme Court turned down a request by a group fighting to stop a proposed copper mine in an area east of Superior that's considered a sacred Native American site. To learn more, we welcome Deborah Kroll. She's the Indigenous Affairs reporter at the Arizona Republic and azcentral.com. It's good to see you again. How long have you been working this story?
I've been working this story for about 8 years.
Yeah, it is a long-standing suit. Okay, the proposed copper mine, what are we talking about here?
The proposed copper mine is in the second largest remaining ores of copper discovered here on the continent. They're thinking there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 billion pounds of copper underneath Oak Flat Campground. And we know that there has been mining in that area for more than 100 years until the Eisenhower administration issued a mining ban. It was reiterated by the Nixon administration, but when they found that ore body, a British-Australian company called Resolution wanted to figure out a way to get to that copper because, there's billions and billions of dollars worth of copper down there.
And so there was a land swap involved, correct?
Yes. Resolution had bought about 5,000 acres of environmentally sensitive land and wanted to exchange that to the Forest Service for the 2,200 acres of the Oak Flat Campground. They ran afoul of both Native activists, environmentalists, and recreationists who all value Oak Flat and didn't want anything to happen to it. But in the dark of night in December 2014, a group of congressmen led by Senator McCain stuck a midnight rider onto a must-pass defense bill. And we all know defense bills have to pass. So that put the land swap into play. And the Apaches and their allies have been fighting it ever since.
And this is considered, has it always been considered sacred land to the Apaches?
It has been considered sacred land to at least one band of Apaches. I want to make that clear, that
Okay.
there are some Apache people who don't really care either way. Other Apaches just want to have a job. But this one particular band, which is led by Wensler Nosey, the former chairman of the San Carlos Apache tribe, and other Apache people from other Apache bands do consider this a sacred place. And it's been, archaeology and anthropology has shown that there has been ceremonies going on there. There's burials, there's various other assets.
And that was the crux of this particular lawsuit by Apache Stronghold, I guess, which is a kind of a grassroots group that brought the suit. It's basically what they're saying is we're talking First Amendment rights, we're talking religious rights here. And the Supreme Court said, what? No, we're not going to listen to that. What's that all about?
Back in the 1980s, there was a Supreme Court decision known as Ling. In fact, former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor was heavily involved in that, where a group of Native people wanted to save a sacred grove of redwoods from having a logging road go through it. And the argument was that they didn't think, the Supreme Court at the time didn't think that the Native people's right to religion would be restricted, such as the situation that led to the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and several other laws that restored the right of Native people to practice their religion. So several other courts have been relying on that decision ever since. But there is a growing number. We looked at some of the papers and dissent papers from the Ninth Circuit, which also ruled against Apache Stronghold, like a 6-5 vote.
Yes.
And they're all saying maybe we need to revisit this.
Well, and the Supreme Court, Justice Gorsuch, who is no flaming liberal here at all, his quote was, "This is a grievous mistake. Consequences will reverberate for generations." Did the Supreme Court give a reason for not hearing this?
No, they gave no reason. The only thing that we know is Gorsuch's dissent, which we thought was kind of unusual that Thomas concurred with it.
So Thomas did concur with the dissent.
He concurred with the dissent.
Interesting.
Right at the top it says concurring.
And again, so Apache Stronghold, you've lost these series of lower court rulings. The Supreme Court's not listening or not listening to it right now. Are there other, what happens next with this proposal? This is a massive mine project.
It's a huge mine project. Resolution has already sunk hundreds of millions of dollars into it in preparation for just starting the process. It'll be 40 to 60 years before all the copper that they can get out is out. It's probably going to be a minimum of 10 to 15 years before they even start bringing any copper out of the ground.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, and I understand from your reporting, block cave mining will be used, and that means humongous craters, correct?
Yes, yes. Think of it as an underground open pit mine, because they're going to tunnel underneath the ore body, and they're going to leave pillars up. And then there will be another tunnel that is drilled to a crushing site. So once they get it all undermined, they're going to start knocking down the pillars, which is going to cascade the
I see.
Yeah, and eventually what will be left is about a 2-mile wide, 1,000-foot deep crater.
Wow, so what was held up will be knocked down and that crater will... Okay, real quickly, are there other lawsuits? Is this over? This is not a done deal, is it?
It's not a done deal. There's 2 other lawsuits in the wings, one by the San Carlos Apache tribe and one by a coalition of environmentalists. The San Carlos Apache tribe has filed for an emergency injunction while their suit is adjudicated, because they're fearing that once the environmental impact statement is issued, probably in mid-June, that opens up a 60-day window, any time of which they can hand the deed over to Resolution, and they just want a chance. They want their day in court.
And real quickly, are they going with the environmental concerns, or because now the religious concerns, the First Amendment, we just saw what happened there as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. Where are they going? What's their trend?
They're going with environmental and water issues. They're worried that the big crater is going to collapse a major aquifer that serves most of eastern and central Arizona, the Apache Tuff.
Last question here. Has the copper company, have they changed the plans? Have they listened to those who are against this, those who are at least concerned. Has this changed over the years?
They have made some pretty major concessions. You know, they knocked the footprint down from 2,400 acres to 2,200 acres. They've done a lot of environmental mitigation because one of the big concerns were the Emery oak groves. Emery oaks are under a lot of pressure from climate change, so they've been working there. They've been working to do a lot of the cultural assessments and saving what they can. But the thing is, with a land-based religion, once the land is gone, so is the religious power. So I don't think there's any way they can get around that. Although they seem to be trying to do. They're trying to do something.
Yeah, concessions have been made,
yes.
But you still got a long way to go. Deb Curl, again, great reporting on this, especially over the years. You've been doing a great job on this. Thanks so much for sharing your story.
Well, thanks for having me on again.
You bet.
It's the biggest lineup of 60s and 70s soul superstars ever, here on your public television station. It's my music, 60s and 70s soul superstars.
You found another home, and I know you're not alone on the night shift. Drive easy. Everybody, uneasy like Sunday morning. Say what? Ow, right on. Yeah, she's a mighty.
Saturday night at 8:30 on Arizona PBS.
The age of discovery is now. It's like magic.
Act like you're having a good time.
I am. Isn't it wonderful?
Hey, I can do better than that.
Brace yourself. The world's changing.
Very poetic.
It's one of the coolest animal stories on the planet.
This role as a caregiver is an emotional ride.
Be ready to be amazed and have that wonder.
The U.S. Justice Department recently announced that it was ending its civil rights investigation into the Phoenix Police Department. It was one of a number of such police investigations around the country that the DOJ, under the Trump administration, ended. Joining us now is Michael White, an ASU professor and associate director of the ASU Center for Violence Prevention and Community Safety. Good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Your initial thoughts when you heard the Justice Department said we're out of here?
You know, Ted, well, first, thanks for having me. But my initial thought was I wasn't surprised at all. During the first Trump administration, more or less the same thing happened. So I think it's important to recognize that the dismissal of the investigation in Phoenix, and as you said, in a number of other cities, is a political one. It has nothing to do with the merits of the investigation or the evidence or anything like that. It's simply based on really the philosophical position of the Trump administration. They believe the U.S. Department of Justice should not be involved in the investigation and oversight of local police departments.
And not only that, but correct me if I'm wrong, the constitutional violations that were found, those have been retracted, correct?
If you read the report, the DOJ findings report of the results of the investigation of the Phoenix Police Department, that it's a damn report. The report alleges significant, deep organizational problems involving use of force, involving how the department responded to protests, how they handled cases involving homeless individuals. The allegations were significant. They were serious. And, as we know, the police department and the city council, they disputed most of those allegations. So, at this point, we had an investigation that took more than 3 years to complete, which is a problem in and of itself. A significant amount of resources devoted to that investigation, a ton of concerning issues raised, and now it's all gone. So I think that, the real question is whether or not the Phoenix Police Department made significant improvements during that time that the investigation was being carried out. They brought in a reform-minded police chief who had experience in Baltimore, going through a consent decree, a federal oversight process, and the department has alleged that they've addressed many of the concerns that were raised in that report. And since the investigation's over, since there will be no further, investigation or oversight at all, we really don't know whether that's true or not. So that, it's a big question, I think, at this point.
I was going to ask, is the Justice Department saying that these, by saying these never were problems, or are they saying these aren't problems now?
I think what they're saying is they're essentially pulling back, and I believe they're not weighing in on the merits of the evidence or the investigation. They're simply saying, we're not going to do this. This is not something that we're interested in engaging in. And like I said, the Trump administration had done that previously. And like I said, it's really a philosophical position that they've taken. They don't believe the federal government should be involved in this kind of work. They believe that when local police departments in misconduct, that it should be handled at the local level. It should not involve a DOJ, a federal response, and that's the position.
At the local level now, there has been, as you mentioned, attempts to reform, as at least that's what we have heard, this Road to Reform report from the Phoenix Police Department. What is the impact of all of this on policing in Phoenix?
I think usually when this process has happened, that there's an investigation and a findings letter issued, usually what has happened is that the city and police department almost immediately begin negotiations with the Department of Justice. And the city of Phoenix and the Phoenix Police Department took a very unusual position in that when that letter was issued, those findings were publicized, they objected to it. They decided to fight it. And it turns out that was a good decision for them, because with the election and then Trump's philosophical position on this, it's all gone away now.
They did, and again, they not only said that they would fight it, they called it a smear campaign, and now the new U.S. attorney for Arizona called it a, quote, unjust investigation. Does that ring true to you?
It's hard to say. There are lots of criticisms of the DOJ investigation process generally, and we see those play out in what happened in Phoenix. The fact that it took 3.5 years to complete the investigation, in my view, is ridiculous. You can't take that long to complete the investigation. The other thing is, the investigation is completed by attorneys. It's not completed by social scientists who have expertise in data analysis and sophisticated kinds of analyses that would, I think, make a stronger case or not for whether the allegations are true. So, it's really hard to say whether the most serious allegations that are alleged in that report, whether they had any merit or not. The Road to Reform report, it's an excellent read. It looks like the department acknowledged a lot of the issues of concern, and these are deep organizational issues involving recruitment, training, supervision, accountability. And, in many cases, the federal oversight process exists because police departments often will not change unless compelled to do so. And I guess what we'll see now over the next several years is whether Phoenix is going to make those changes on their own.
Indeed, the consent decree was one thing, but having a Justice Department that says, we find this is not our responsibility or not something that we should get involved in is quite another. Michael White, again, ASU Center for Violence Prevention and Community Safety. Good conversation. Good to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Take care.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, why the U.S. is pausing interviews for new student visas. That's coming up at 6 on Arizona PBS.
A new report by the Alzheimer's Association shows that 1 in 9 Arizona seniors have Alzheimer's disease. That's the highest number reported to date, and that number is expected to increase as the population of seniors increases. Dr. Parachita Chowdhury is a cognitive and behavioral neurologist at Banner Sun Health Research Institute. Doctor, good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, this is great. Okay, it's great to have you here. It's not great. These numbers are not great. Talked about the numbers, what was looked at, and how it's changed from previous studies.
Sure. So it's obviously staggering, but part of the reason is that Arizona has a high aging population. So age is one of the biggest risk factors for neurodegenerative diseases, including Alzheimer's disease. And every year, the Alzheimer's Association comes out with a facts and figures sort of report. And while the percentage of people over the age of 65 is at 11%, Arizona equal to national average, prevalence-wise, however, we have the fastest rate of increase. From 2020 to 2025, we have had about 33% increased rate of diagnosis.
So the ratio hasn't really changed, but the number, the volume has changed.
Yes.
Because we're just getting more folks here, aren't we?
That's part of the reason for sure.
I saw as well that almost 2/3 of those with Alzheimer's are women.
That's right.
I was very surprised to see that.
So actually, this has been known for a little while, but we understand little about why that is the case. We have hypotheses which all have some evidence. So one of the biggest hypotheses is hormones. Estrogen is thought to be a protective factor for women, and then after menopause there's supposed to be an accelerated decline in cognitive function. Another theory is that women live longer, and when they live longer they have more resilience, but when the disease does hit they have a bigger downfall.
That's what I thought. First when I saw that, I thought it's got to be because women just live longer. Yeah. Ethnicity, race, what are we seeing there?
So generally, Hispanics and Black folks have a higher rate of Alzheimer's disease than white Caucasians do, about 2 times higher in Blacks, about 1.5 times higher in Hispanics.
Do we know why?
We don't know all of the reasons. One of the biggest challenges is that we don't study them enough. So of course, there is some barriers to participation in studies for all of these communities.
The study also talked about, this is a quote, an upward influence on disease burden. That means, in other words, a whole lot more folks to take care of.
That's right. So, and also economic burden and healthcare burden. So just as number of people who are afflicted with the disease is rising, so are caregivers. And you will also note that most of the caregivers are also women. And so in addition to that, we have a higher rate of mortality, higher rates of long-term care facilities. All of these things require a bigger dementia workforce, which does not exist at this time.
Indeed, it doesn't exist. Is there an effort afoot to get it to exist, or to at least improve the situation?
Absolutely. We, at least at Banner Health, we try to do grassroots effort. So we try to recruit folks at all stages of training into dementia care. But also we want to train other folks that are already working in nursing homes and things like that. There are programs to train them in understanding dementia and caring for people with dementia.
We've done so many programs, so many segments on this program about dementia, about Alzheimer's, and it's one of the few things that we've talked about health-wise. It just doesn't seem like we have very good results or improvements. Is something, I read about a blood test here not too long ago that might be helpful. What's going on out there?
So we are accumulating more and more tools in our armamentarium for diagnosis and treatment, and hopefully in the future prevention one day. So diagnostically, you're right, a week and a half ago, FDA approved the first blood test for the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. Now, there are some caveats to that. This must be for people who already have symptoms, so it cannot be for someone who does not have any symptoms. It must be in a specialty settings where they are getting the appropriate evaluation. Something we understand about Alzheimer's disease is the proteins start accumulating in our brain about 20 to 10 years prior to onset of symptoms. So what we don't want is just detection of the protein in our blood, but not having symptoms. So, and not being able to give people the context or reason for their cognitive symptoms.
But a blood test like this, would this lead to other research that would help explain, as you mentioned, we kind of know 10, 20 years prior, when that 10, 20 years prior hits, can this help in terms of prevention?
Oh, absolutely. And there are trials already underway. So there are trials where we are detecting people who have Alzheimer's disease, amyloid plaques in their brain, and the blood test was the first step in screening those folks. Then they went into the study and they were either given an infusion drug to remove the plaques or given the placebo, and we will find out results in probably the next couple of years. And if it shows delays onset of symptoms or reduces burden on folks, that is going to be a game changer in our field.
Well, let's hope so. Dr. Parachita Chaudhary, again, Banner Sun Health Research Institute, and we're always looking for good stories when it comes to Alzheimer's, and this certainly sounds promising. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
And that is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.